Okay, so last time, we started talking about utilitarianism, and I said that there were two parts to the theory. There's hedonism and impartiality. And we talked about hedonism. Hedonism is this claim that the only things that matter are pleasure and the absence of pain. The only things that are important about to determine whether someone's life is going well is how much pleasure and how little pain. Now, you can be a hedonist without being a utilitarian. In the history of philosophy, there were this group, the Epicureans. They were hedonists. They weren't utilitarians because they didn't subscribe to this impartiality thing. All right. So, what is impartiality? Well, remember, said we can think about the two parts of utilitarianism as answering two questions. Hedonism answers the first, what is good, what makes someone's life go well. Impartiality answers the second, whose good should we care about? And the utilitarian's response is this: everyone's. Not just everyone's, but everyone's equally. So now we have the whole theory on the table. What is good? Happiness, pleasure in the absence of pain. Whose good should I care about? Everyone's, and everyone's equally. You have to have both of these to be a utilitarian. You could only, if you only had one, you might be some sort of egoist. The Epicureans were. You might only care about your own happiness, but the utilitarians care about everyone's. And the utilitarians have a pretty convincing argument for why we should care about everyone's happiness, right? They'll say, look, think about the way your pleasure feels. It's good, right? And every other person, when they are experiencing pleasure, it feels exactly the same way for them. It's even clearer with pain, right? If you're having a headache, you know that that's bad. If you are sad because something happened to you or a friend of yours, sadness is bad. It feels bad. If another person is in physical pain or they're sad or anxious, you know what that feels like. If it's bad for you, it's bad for them, right? So now that we have all this on the table, we get the full utilitarian theory. And the utilitarian will say the right action is whatever creates the greatest overall happiness. Greatest overall happiness is the happiness of every single person added up. That even might be a little too simple. Things besides people might count. We'll talk about why that is. But at the very least, we have to think about all the people who are affected. You want to create the greatest overall happiness, not just happiness for you or some narrow group that you might care about, but happiness for every person affected by the action. The right action is the one that will create the most happiness. Wrong actions are actions that don't create the most overall happiness. Now, to see how this is going to work, let's end with a question, right? And we'll start the next lecture by answering these questions. So if you're a utilitarian, why is murder wrong? Obviously, we all know murder is wrong, but if we're coming up with a good moral theory, it should give us a good account of why that is. Why is theft wrong? Most of us think it's usually wrong to take someone else's property without their permission. Why is that? What will the utilitarian say? What will their account be? Take a case where pretty much most of us agree, I think, it's morally wrong to steal. Breaking into someone's car just because you see some money in it and you want to take the money, right? Why is that morally wrong? What will the utilitarian say? Before you start the next lecture, we'll talk about these. Ask yourself, what would the utilitarian answer to both of these be? If you are trying to create the most overall happiness, how would this fail to create the greatest overall happiness? Who is affected? How are they affected? And how does that, the way they're affected, mean this does not create the greatest overall happiness? Think about that. That's where we will start next lecture.